Honestly, you should do like I could totally see you like doing like a class for these folks, like it's their first time doing email marketing. They don't know exactly like, where the bang from the buck comes from. You'd be great at that.
I should think about that.
I mean, this is I could talk about this all day. Now we're talking about email marketing. Come on, let's go. All right, everyone, welcome back to Numbers and Narratives. I'm Sean Collins.
And I'm Ibi Syed.
Today we're talking to Sonja Grosser, and we're going to learn about why you need to break it down into bite-sized, actionable goals when it comes to personalization and segmentation.
Yeah, this is a really, really fun conversation. Sonia, thanks so much for coming on. This is gonna be an awesome episode.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Yep.
All right, Sonia, you want to just start by introducing yourself? Like very, 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 very go for it.
All right. So, hey everyone, I'm Sonja Grosser. I'm a senior director in the retention and lifecycle marketing space, and I've been in this space for a little over 10 years now, owning basically all parts of retention throughout my journey for companies across industries. And most recently, I've been in the CPG space, in the wellness, health and wellness supplementation space.
What kind of data analyses have you used at previous jobs to sort of get a lay of the land?
Yeah, so great question. All the data we need for retention is there. So basically, you have all the data, you just need to find a way to extract it and to do some analysis. And parts of those are historical data, very important to understand what's going on, what was going on in the past. Then segmentation, cohort analysis, and then predictive data, because we want to know the potential of what's possible with the individual customer or customer bucket. And if that's of value, I can dive into those three individually.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably let's start with the historical analysis, and then I think that's the most traditional that people would kind of think of, and then we'll start there and then move into the predictive.
Yeah, so historical data includes everything a customer or potential customer did in the past. So that includes purchase data, it includes their browsing data, it includes any action they took that we can measure and that we know of. It's
That
it's
I would like to lean into that one actually real quick.
yeah,
The browsing data is one that I feel like so many e-commerce brands just throw away and don't pay attention to. I that was something I used to harp on a lot. It's not very hard, especially if you're using Klaviyo and Google Tag Manager, right? You can set up an event anytime they read a blog article, or if they check out a certain type. I think marketers think about browse abandonment, they think about cart abandonment, but they don't think about the pages that are non-product pages and using those to guide intent and interest. So like how do you kind of capture some of that, and then knowing that most of your user data is going to come post purchase or browse, with a cart abandonments, how do you leverage some of the data points you have pre product engagement or pre purchase to affect your marketing messages?
yeah, this is super cool because this is a data set that, like what you mentioned earlier, Ibi, that sometimes companies want to do it all, or they have a team of one, they don't know what to do. When you leverage the browsing data, in my opinion, it's the best starting point because you understand what they did before they made a purchase. So customers who opted in for your marketing at one point in their journey and who did not make a purchase yet, you have to leverage their browsing data. You have to look into where they are at in the journey. And you mentioned web pages that are not the typical target of understanding browsing data, which can be a blog post or which can be a video that you posted somewhere. If you miss out on using that data, it's really a miss, because understanding those first 30 days after opting in and how many people convert and how quickly they convert, if you just do that for the next 6 months in your business, you're gonna have a win. I promise you that.
And what tool, like if you were to show up to a company and try and teach them how to do this, what's the tech stack they need? Maybe there's like a cheap version, an expensive version, or how are you kind of thinking about actually putting into action doing this analysis and getting this data?
Yeah, that's really important to understand as well, because the data's there. but using the data in an actionable way, it's sometimes really challenging because you can't just pull all the, I'd say, siloed ways the data is collected. Like you have data in Shopify, you've got data in Klaviyo, whatever ESP you're using. Then maybe you have other apps that you're using that tell you more. But to bring it all together in a proper manner can be really difficult when you don't have the time to do like manual analysis, which I wouldn't recommend at all because it just never lives up to the expectations and it's really difficult. You need an app that collects your data in a way to present it to you so you can take it and run with it. And I'm assuming you guys also use the Coursera app, which has helped us a ton to understand those customer buckets. Because you don't just want the whole bucket of non-purchasers. You want to understand what makes them different, and then you want to respond to that accordingly.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. On going back to the browsing question, I think Sean, you guys, I assume that the easiest way to start for brands, at least the ones that we work with, is Google Analytics, right? People like install GA on there. They understand sort of like GA has a lot of good data as well on, what customers are clicking on. What does funnel analysis look like? Yeah, we definitely do that as well, but I think for a company just getting started, that's an easy thing to install.
Yeah, I think Google Analytics is a great starting point. I think people need to remember that out of the box, Google Analytics is not ready to go and it's not going to give you all the insights. And so people should invest in either a whole bunch of YouTube videos and blogs or a couple $1,000s to bring somebody on who can and do a pretty quick setup. There's a few other apps that are also pretty solid to make your Google Analytics a little bit better. But then I think you also want to start, obviously the more refined you can get over time, the better. But starting at like the most approachable way, let's talk about blogs, right? Blogs are a fantastic way to get interest and intent, and then you can pair products to those blogs based off what's complementary. And so the easiest way to do that is with a tagging system, right? And so now you can say, hey, these 10 blogs are about, you know, skin and these 10 are about hair. And so if someone's reading a skin blog, that should change the content you're emailing them and that should change the ads you're running, just like you would change your ads if they look at a hair product versus a skin product. You would have, dynamic product ads about each of those. Your emails should also do that. And in fact, I would think email is, in my opinion, as an email marketer, email is much more important than the ad because that's where we can actually educate and actually give them a lot of content, right? So as you get this historical kind of data, Sonja, like how are you starting to put that into action and say like, okay, I know that these kind of behaviors lead to this and these behaviors lead to this. How do you increase that conversion rate or decrease that time to conversion rate?
Yeah, I think the trick here is to be very specific in how you actually build your emails and be very intentional in how you use the technology available to you. Because I would say every proper email system out there provides you with the ability to feed in segment data to allow the email to show or omit content based on segment membership, right? And that can come from those tags that you mentioned, or it can come from data that customers volunteer when they sign up for your email list. And I see brands more and more doing that. And I think it's a fantastic idea to actually ask those right questions for your business because customers will volunteer that information when they sign up to be on your marketing list.
Yeah.
And that can go from simple gender specifics to product or category interest to actually goals, especially in the industry I'm in currently, which revolves a lot around goals, right? In the health and wellness space, you ask people, what are your goals? You don't ask them, hey, what product are you interested in? You're like, hey, do you want to lose weight? Hey, do you want to build muscle? Do you want to just feel better in the morning when you wake up? Do you need better sleep? Whatever it is, ask people the right questions and use that data. It's easy.
I feel like a lot of what Sean was talking about in the blog content the blog content bit's interesting. What you just said about quizzes is super interesting, right? Because if somebody comes in and they say, "Hey, I want to lose weight," or somebody looks at a blog post about losing weight, and you get that signal in Klaviyo where it says, "Hey, this customer has an interest in losing weight," or "This customer has viewed this blog content." Do you have any examples of how you've used information like that to do segmentation, and what are some of the benefits that have come out of it?
Yeah, obviously geared around products that fit the narrative, right? So whenever we have a discount or we go out of stock or we are just getting product back in stock or there's new flavors or like anything that's of interest for that cohort, you would basically feed it to them, but then also you would keep on educating them. And you really have to marry that data, like that interest-based data, also with behavioral data. You need to understand whether that's a customer that's already purchased, or whether that's a customer that's about to purchase, or whether that's a customer that just came on that may not even know your brand. And there's so many layers to that that you are able to access with the right data sets that can turn one email into 10 variations of it with very little efforts.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You brought up something that I kind of wanted to double click on for a sec, which was the customer education portion of it, because I think a lot of what drives repeat order rate and customers to come back is really understanding what the product is supposed to be used for, right? What's the best way of using it? What are the benefits? What are the potential health benefits? I'll pick on supplement brands because that's how we work together. But if you're selling workout supplements or vitamins or something along those lines, you want to get that customer to see a benefit from it. And so, have you used it in like customer education, sort of like use the information about what product somebody buys to recommend content to try to drive that? Have you ever experienced anything along those lines?
Yeah, so there's basically the way I see it, you have to kind of go on two different tracks here. The pre-education for the customer who didn't purchase, and then the post-purchase education for the customer who actually has your product at home, because they want to know different things than the people who haven't purchased yet. And obviously, there's all the automations that go out anyways, where you can implement all those educational portions. And then the daily broadcasts should always include some sort of interest-based portion that will help the customer when they open it, because obviously they don't open all of them, to feel like we're still speaking to them in a personalized manner.
100%.
I
100%.
used to call those, those interest-based things and those education and non-product things, I broadly group them as in a category called trust builders. And when I was agency side, I ran a bunch of tests for a bunch of brands at the same time, exact same email, by each brand, but one would have blog articles or YouTube videos or something that was meant to educate and engage beyond just kind of talking about a product, and one would not. And what I always saw across every brand we did this on, no one was clicking on those blogs, but the conversion rate from those emails was multiple percentage points higher. Where it's like my thought is it's just people feeling like those resources are there and that they're not just being sold to, made them more willing to buy.
That's
Right. I sorry. Yeah, I love that. And I think it's exactly the way you just said it. Just knowing it's available to you, even if you don't take advantage of it at that point, it's a game changer for a lot of people to just build that trust.
All right, Sonia. So you mentioned when you're doing these daily blast emails, how you need to have some sort of dynamic or personalized content in every one of them. I think for a lot of brands, what terrifies them is either A, they don't know how, or B, they think that just sounds like an insane amount of work. So the first question I want to hear about is like, how are you doing that at scale? Uh, the second thing I want to hear from you is like, how personalized does it need to be? And then the third is, if you don't do that, like I would say the 95% of brands out there, what's going to go wrong, and what does that make you have to do?
Yeah, wow. Lots of questions. So the first thing, yes, I agree. This can sound really frightening and a lot of work. but it's actually not, because all the major ESPs, I know Klaviyo does, they offer the option to prepare portions of the email just as a section and reuse them over and over again. You can basically save those and then decide on a daily basis what you want to use. So the way you get started with this is to understand what kind of personalization you want to lean into. Let's say you want to lean into, and I'm going back to what I said earlier, I would suggest to lean into two major buckets, which is the purchaser and the non-purchaser, and to understand what do I want to personalize for the non-purchaser, what do I want to personalize for the person who purchased once or more often, right? Once you have that distinction, then you can dive into those individual groups individually and see what you can do with the data you have available. So for the non-purchaser, education and trust building is top priority. So you would basically use their browsing data or self-identified data to understand what they're looking at. Like if your catalog is huge, this is going to be really valuable to you, because if your catalog has like 20 categories, you really need to know why they are here. And I have those great examples of like emails I got after I, let's say, purchased a blanket and I get recommended another blanket instead of a pillow, right? So it's just missing out on that understanding. So purchasers have different needs than non-purchasers. They bought the product. You want to make sure they don't regret it the moment they purchased. And you want to do a couple of different things. And let me refer to, let's say, health and wellness products. For this example, you want to tell them how to use it, but you also want to tell them what they can expect and how they should expect to feel after they take it. Because there's that void out there where you're like, okay, I got a greens powder. Now, okay, I know how to use it, instructions on there. That's the easy part. But then I take it, what do I need to pay attention to? And education around that is just so important, because if I don't feel it's worth my money or, the time investing into building that habit, then it's really easy for the customer to drop off.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of brands are missing out. They're missing out on that post-purchase kind of affirmation for the customer to make them realize why they actually buy this.
I think that's a phenomenal example because, with some products inherently are less predictable purchase cycles, right? Like if you are a fashion brand, there are, of course, if your kids' fashion, there's back to school and there's seasonal changes and stuff like that. But arguably, I could buy a shirt whenever I want to buy a shirt. So it's less about a time-bound need and more about an event or an inciting incident or me seeing an ad and being motivated. With something like a CPG product, or especially like a supplement or health and wellness kind of product where you have expected consumption timelines and there will be a need to refill, of course they could buy off cycle and they might buy a different product, but generally we can say, hey, you bought this product, theoretically you're buying the supplement and it should be for a long time. And so you should be buying every 30 days or 2 weeks or whatever, right? And so when you talked about that post-purchase education and engagement, but how, like, is that one automation? Like, hey, I made a purchase, your post-purchase email is like, here's how to use it and what to expect? Or how are you filling those 30 days between, they buy a tub of protein and they're buying the next tub of protein and again, like same kind of concept. A health and wellness kind of product isn't going to cure you or give you, and like, you won't eat that greens, have that first green smoothie and suddenly be like, I lost 10 pounds. I feel great. I'm sleeping better, right? It's over time. So kind of how do you balance the need for them to buy multiple times to really get the value? And you need to do things to get them to buy multiple times.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of really important points, because the important part here is to touch on all those angles. Like you said, you won't feel a difference right away when you take greens powder, but you may feel some sort of improvement with certain areas of your health over time, let's say within 3 months. So the goal is really to keep them going and to tell them what they will get, because you also have to be very careful with claims that you make in terms of health, but more of even tell them what's probably or potentially going to be removed, that they want to be removed from their day to day. Let's say let's stick to the greens example. Let's say they always feel bad because they don't eat vegetables, right? They can take a greens powder. They don't necessarily feel different, but you just suddenly removed their concern of not eating enough veggies. Like, you need to get creative, and in the post-purchase cycle, and that includes more work, right? You need to break out those post-purchase automations by product and product group. There's no way around that. You need to understand, and that would be another example of prioritization modeling. You need to understand, let's say, what's your top seller, where are your top margins, like where is it worth putting the work into actually making those sequences, those post-purchase sequences that can contain, let's say, up to 7 or 10 emails in their first month of purchase. And then obviously you need to break it out by purchased for the first time, aka more efforts needed, then purchase the second time, and then 3 plus, kind of one bucket.
That's, I think you said the perfect word of prioritization there. You know, a lot of e-commerce teams either have a general kind of growth marketer or marketer, or they have a single retention marketer. You know, there's very few e-commerce teams that have, you know, a huge retention team of multiple designers and strategists and writers and stuff like that. So it does become a battle of prioritization. And so how do you kind of approach that opportunity sizing, or figuring out how to make this smaller bites rather than trying to just eat it all at once?
Right. So I think the important part is to get started somewhere, even if that means pick that one product that is your top seller, or that gets the most traffic, whatever you want to pick, and then map it out for that product or product line.
Set
And
yourself like
then,
bite-sized goals. Like, hey, like
right,
I'm going to focus on increasing the return rate of this product very
yeah,
specifically because it's where the most, we get the most margin. We'll get the most, like, if we can if we can increase it by 2%, product X has 1 million people buying it versus product Y, which has only 500,000 people buying it. Increasing it by 2% on product X is way better than increasing it for 2% on product Y. And if it works, then
right,
you can do it for everything down the train.
right, exactly. And Sean, you mentioned something really important, which is people available to help you with this, designers, copywriters, whatever is needed, right? So there's a lot of misconception around what's really of value to the customer, and it doesn't need to be unique content and unique design for all of those kind of things. So basically, the way I approach this is to start out with the product that returns the most value for doing this, and then kind of work off of templates, basically, and be like, hey, the customer really doesn't care that your email looks the same for greens than it does for like pre-workout, right? They don't really care. You don't need to reinvent this and use resources that you don't need to use.
I think that alone, just that last couple sentences, would be something that every single marketer should listen to. They don't know what you're sending to other people. They don't care. They care that they're getting a personalized, relevant experience.
This is
Right.
This is super funny because Tom, my co-founder, and this is obviously not in the CPG space at all, but we had this conversation this morning. Is we're creating product pages on our website, which is long overdue, but we're talking about the visual and the creative, and we looked at a bunch of other websites, and we kind of realized that when somebody lands on your website to look for a specific thing, they probably aren't actually going to browse around. And so every CPG and B2B company we looked at across the different product pages, the images were like the visuals were like the same. They used a lot of the same graphics. They used a lot of the same general verbiage. Yeah, people have no idea. Like they're browsing and they're opening those emails in silos. So yeah, reduce, reuse, and recycle basically.
And the amount of brain space they're giving your product or their time shopping with you is so small, right? And that's why,
Mhm.
you know, designers do lean into like iconography and, you know, things that can simplify the user experience where they don't want to have to be like comparing 3 different pages and seeing like, oh, but this one has a green icon and this one has a blue one. I wonder what that means. Like, make it easy. All right, should we wrap up? I think this was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I actually, Sonia, you did a. This has been great.
I think so, man. I mean, like, I maybe if I don't know if you want to have Sonia any sort of like call to action for you of like how people can get in touch with you if they want to work with you or follow you or anything like that, you know? But other than that, I mean, I think that was to me this was actually the most fun conversation we've had yet.
First of all, thanks for having me. This was so much fun. I can be found on LinkedIn under my name, Sonja Gracer. You'll find me there. You can get in touch with me there. And
Nice.
yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll link to it in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Sonia.
Fun.
thank you.
All right.